Master Hong's Lucky Bride. Chapter 1. Someone wanted to marry her. Miss, the people from the bank are here. Sen Shuang sat under the crystal lamp and looked at the house she had lived in for 20 years. She nodded stiffly. 3 days ago, the Sen family had gone bankrupt. The Sen family, which had stood tall in Lin City for more than 100 years, had been wiped out in an instant, following the disappearance of her father and the suicide of her mother. The butler, Elder Lee, had moved her luggage over. This was her last day in the Sen family. All the servants had been sent away, leaving only her. After staying here for decades, the Sen family had finally been disbanded, and she had nowhere to go. The rain that had just fallen last night dripped onto the courtyard. In this August weather, she actually felt an icy chill when she went out. Sen Shuang tightened the suitcase she was holding and walked out, not daring to turn back to take another look. Outside the door stood a staff from the bank. Sen Shuang walked over and signed her name. She could not help but ask, "How soon will this house be auctioned?" The staff looked at the woman in front of her with amazement. After recovering from her shock, she said, "It should be half a year." "I heard that this house was market value of 30 million. I'm afraid that you can't even afford pancakes right now, right, Miss Sen?" A sarcastic voice came from the sports car parked by the roadside. Sen Chuang coldly watched the two figures walking toward her. Zhao Nan's gaze fell on Sen Chuang and instantly brightened. The sight of her ruthlessly teased his heart. This overly beautiful face, even if it was expressionless, was undeniably stunning. The two girls from the Sen family were famous for their beauty. The eldest sister was gentle, the younger sister was charming, and Sen Shuang was the most famous soliciate in Lin City. Shao Nan was one of the many rich young masters who had pursued her. However, although he had pursued her for 3 years, Sen Shuang had not given him the time of day. He was more delighted than anyone that the Sen family had lost everything. Sen Shuang could not be bothered with such a person and turned to leave. "Sen Shuang, you're practically nothing now. What's there to be proud of?" Jinya held on to the man beside her, but her heart was filled with hatred. She was the daughter of a wealthy family and the pearl of the Jin family. However, she had lived under the shadow of the Sen sisters since she was young. Regardless of whether it was at school or the people around them, they only had eyes for the beautiful bodies of the Sen sisters, and Sen Shuang was the one they talked about the most. This time, she wanted to see if Sen Shuang could become the number one soliciate in Lin City without the Sen family. "The Sen family's assets have all been seized by the bank. You're all alone now. It's quite pathetic. Why don't you come with me? It'll save you the trouble of sleeping on the streets tonight." Shao Nan's eyes sparkled. No matter how hard Jinya pulled on his arm, his gaze was still fixed on Sen Shuang. A woman's beauty could really seduce one's soul. Shao Nan felt that his heart was about to be stolen by the woman in front of him. Even as Sen Shuang stood still, she could still excite him. Shao Nan could not help but reach out to touch Sen Shuang's face, but she grabbed his wrist midair. Sen Shuang pushed his hand down. Shao Nan immediately screamed in pain and fell to the ground. "Sen Shuang, you actually hurt someone. Watch out or I'll call the police." "As you wish." Sen Shuang spat out those words, then turned around to walk to the end of the road. Behind her, Jin Ya was shouting something. She was already in no mood to listen. Half an hour later, Sen Shuang received a phone call. "We are being very sincere. Please consider it carefully, Miss Sen." The corners of Sen Shuang's lips curled up, and she said without hesitation, "I agree." Soon, an address appeared on her phone. It was an address to another villa not far from the Sen family. Someone had proposed to her, and she had agreed to marry him. The house looked very much like the Sen family's house, but it was twice its size. Sen Shuang blinked and rang the doorbell. Soon, someone came out to pick her up and brought her into the villa. It was a long walk, and only the sound of her luggage being dragged on the ground could be heard. It was out of place in this quiet courtyard. Sensual walked to the front door, and the servants left. However, someone else brought her in. There were only two people sitting in the house. One was an old man with white hair, and the other was an elegant lady. When the lady saw Sen Shuang, she could not help but be stunned. Although she had seen Sen Shuang's photo a long time ago, she did not expect that she would be even more stunning than her photo. Such a beautiful woman often could not be kept. "You are Sen Shuang, Lan Yabai," said without batting an eyelid. Sen Shuang nodded and greeted them politely. "Hello, Grandpa Zhang. Hello, Mrs. Zhang." She was elegant and decent. Such a decent girl was indeed qualified to be her daughter-in-law, but unfortunately, I think it is necessary for me to tell you about the Zhang Hong situation. I know that young Master Zhang was in a car accident half a year ago and hasn't woken up yet. Therefore, she was going to marry a comatose person who might never wake up. There is no different from asking her to stay a widow. Her simple sentence had been avoided many unpleasant words. Lan Yabai felt comfortable, but also a little worried. Just as she was about to open her mouth, she heard Sen Shuang's gentle voice. "I'm willing." It was so simple to agree, it seemed reasonable to surprise them. Chapter 2. Who would dare protect her? The Zhang family. Everyone in Lin City knew about the Sen family's affairs. It was precisely because of this that they thought of going to Sen Shuang, a down-and-out daughter who had no one to rely on and was in urgent need of help. To the Zhang family, Sen Shuang was the most suitable person. "If you have any requests, Miss Sen, the Zhang family will do our best to fulfill them." "I want the Sen family's villa." Who would be willing to marry a vegetable for no reason? The Zhang family knew that she would put forward a condition, so they rushed to marry her into the family. After all, a person with an ulterior motive was very easy to manipulate. Lan Yabai looked at the old man. Although the old man did not say anything, he tactfully agreed to everything. "Okay, if the bank auctions the Sen family's villa, the Zhang family will definitely get it for you. Thank you." This kind of emotionless transaction was best. Sen Shuang was very satisfied with this marriage. A husband who would never wake up in exchange for the Sen family's house and her life of glory and wealth was a great deal. She did not lose anything from this exchange except for the fact that her relationship status had changed from unmarried to married. "I want an agreement to be signed. The Sen family's villa will be transferred directly to my name." "Okay, I will get someone to prepare it." Lan Yabai nodded. Then she looked at Sen Shuang and asked, "When is the wedding?" "The sooner the better. I have no objection to the Zhang family's decision on the wedding." "Tomorrow is an auspicious day. Father, look." Lan Yabai saw that the old man had nodded, and the huge weight on her heart was finally lifted. She would be allowed to marry tomorrow. With Sen Shuang's expedition, the Zhang family was even more anxious than her. Could it be that Zhang Hong was dying and she could celebrate? Sen Shuang's heart was filled with joy. With the Zhang family's financial strength, even if Zhang Hong died, as long as she kept doing what she was supposed to, Lan Yabai would not mistreat her. This world had always been biased against beautiful women. For example, a man like Zhao Zan, who harbored evil intention to be able to stay in the Zhang family until retirement. Sen Shuang felt that it was really great. After discussing the marriage, Sen Shuang left the house and pulled her luggage towards the school. Shao Nan was right. All the funds of the Sen family, including her credit cards, had been frozen by the bank. She could not afford mineral water, let alone anything else. The school was very far from the Zhang family's residence. Sen Shuang walked extremely steadily on her expensive high heels until a car stopped in front of her. The driver got out of the car and said respectfully, "Miss Sen, Madam had sent me to send you off." She did not expect Lan Yabai to be so meticulous. Even she could tell that she could not afford to take a taxi. She did not say anything inside, just now maintain her dignity. She suddenly felt that her mother-in-law was really not bad. Sen Shuang did not hesitate. She directly told the driver the school address. In the Zhang family's residence, Lan Yabai heard that Sen Shuang had returned to the school. She looked at the man who was sleeping peacefully on the bed and sighed. "Son, this child is quite pitiful. Her parents died and her family property was stolen. She's just a girl, so you should take care of her and let her be your companion. Oh, right. The girl's name is Sen Shuang. She's very beautiful and very suitable for you." The man on the bed was still sound asleep. His face looked cold because he had been lying on the bed for a long time due to severe injuries. His face was pale and thin. However, his handsome features still came through. Zhang Hong did not respond to Lan Yabai's words at all. The situation had been going on for half a year, but Lan Yabai still insisted on talking to him every day. She even hoped that the person on the bed would stand up and scold her. In the Lin City Public Security Bureau, Xiao Nan stood with his arms bandaged in a sling. His gaze could not help but fall on Sen Shuang's face. She did this on purpose. "I have the injury report from the hospital. Police, quickly lock her up." The public servant on the opposite side frowned at him. He was a grown man, making things difficult for a young girl. He clearly did not mind being embarrassed. He glanced at the beautiful girl on the opposite side. "Did you hurt him?" "I didn't know that he was teasing me. I just grabbed his hand. Perhaps this gentleman's bones are fragile." The person looked at Zhao Nan. He dared to act like a hooligan, and he acted like she was the villain. "I didn't touch her. She saw that I was rich and threw herself at me. In short, she broke my arm. The people around the bank can testify for me. My girlfriend also saw it." "Enough. A big man had his arm broken by a little girl? You must be quite weak. Are you guys going to settle this now or in private?" Xiao Nan looked at Sen Shuang with malicious intent. "The Sen family is finished. Who would dare to release you? It's not easy to live in there. Why don't you beg me not to press charges?" "What are you doing? Are you making threats?" The public servant on the opposite side slammed the table and warned Xiao Nan. "No, we're just discussing the terms of a private deal. This has to be discussed." "It's official then. Just detain me here," Sen Shuang said, her face as charming as ever. Xiao Nan was not willing to let her off so easily. Just as he was about to open his mouth, someone outside the door said, "Sen Shuang has someone to bail her out. You can leave now." Chapter 3. "And somewhere you'll never find me." Xiao Nan blurted out, "That's impossible. Who would dare to protect her?" A calm voice reply came from outside the door. "The Zhang family." Sen Shuang sat in the Zhang family's car and watched the Zhang family butler walk towards her in the Public Security Bureau. Xiao Nan, who was behind her, was completely stunned. "Thank you for the trouble," Sen Shuang thanked him politely. If the Zhang family representative had not arrived in time, she was afraid that she would have spent the night there. Although she was penniless and could not afford to stay in a hotel, she was not desperate enough to stay the night in a detention center. "Miss, you are too kind. Madam had just received news that you have been wronged. Let the Zhang family handle the rest of the matter. I will send you back to school now." As the Zhang family's butler for 20 years, the rules he had to follow were very strict. Calling her Miss showed that he respected Sen Shuang. Sen Shuang nodded and looked out the window in a daze. "Please thank the madam for me." From tomorrow onwards, she would be calling her mother-in-law. Sen Shuang returned to the school dormitory. She still had half a month left in school. There was no one in the dormitory and she was only staying for one night. Tomorrow, she would be the Zhang family's daughter-in-law, and would be moving into the Zhang family's residence. She was still not used to the idea of being married. After washing up, Sen Shuang lay on the bed and looked at the ceiling in a daze. It was only when her phone rang that she remembered that she had not looked at her phone all day. Sister. Shuang Shuang, why don't you come look for me? Where are you now? Sun Tzu's voice was filled with worry. The Can Corporation had closed down, and the Sen residence had been seized. When she rushed over, she saw the familiar door had been locked with an iron lock. She had searched for Sen Shuang for a whole day, but could not find her. She was going crazy. Sis, I'm fine. I'm at school now. School? Why did you go back to school? I'm going to pick you up now. There's no need. I found a job and will be moving there tomorrow. Don't worry, I'll take care of myself. There was silence on the other end of the phone. Sen Tzu's restrained voice came through. The Sen family has lost everything. I know you feel wronged. Sis, what are you talking about? I'm already 20 years old, and I can support myself. The Sen family is gone. How were your days in the Liu family? Do they bully you? The Sen and Liu families had arranged a business marriage. Sen Shuang knew that Sen Tzu liked Liu Hongyang and that they suited each other. However, she did not expect that Sen Tzu would marry Liu Hongyang. The Liu family was only an empty shell, and Liu Hongyang did not love her. To be precise, Liu Hongyang loved someone else. No, they are very good to me. They had been married for 5 years and still did not have children. How good could they be? However, Sen Shuang did not have the energy to think too much right now. Sis, you don't have to worry about me. Your life will be better if you stay with the Liu family. When I earn money, I will buy the Sen family's residence back. The Sen family villa alone cost 30 million. It would be a dream come true if she could buy it back with her own salary. You have to take care of yourself. Don't work too hard. How could she find a good job as a college student who had not graduated? In fact, she could only technically assuage her sister's worry for her. Sen Shuang hung up the phone and browsed through her messages for the whole day. Most of the messages came from Sen Tzu, but there was a familiar name at the end. She opened the message and heard a man's voice. Sen Shuang, where are you? It repeated over and over again, and a dozen messages after were exactly the same. Sen Shuang's eyes were red as she replied, I'm somewhere you'll never find me. After Sen Shuang replied to the message, she turned off her phone and laid on the bed. She recalled the man's voice in her mind, and it did not fade away for a long time. Tears silently fell into her hair. Yang Jin Yan, from now on, wherever I go is none of your business. That night, Sen Shuang had nightmares. From the plane accident her father was involved in, to the tragic death of her mother, and finally the bankruptcy of the Sen family. In her dreams, the Sen family's villa was seized by the bank. The iron gate was closed, and she walked into the Zhang family residence. She did not know if it was because this dream was too sad, but Sen Shuang cried out loud and woke herself up. The sun shone in from the outside. Morning would come no matter what. Sen Shuang suddenly thought of something and quickly picked up her phone. She ignored the barrage of messages from that person and found the unfamiliar number. Without hesitation, she called her. Miss Sen, the car is outside waiting at the school gate. She did not wait for Sen Shuang to speak. It looked like she had been waiting for a long time. Perhaps the car was not only picking her up, but was also there to arrest her. However, Sen Shuang did not have time to think too much. She quickly changed her clothes, washed up, and ran out. There was a black Bentley parked at the side of the road outside the school gate. The staff stood in front of the car and opened the door when Sen Shuang appeared. I am sorry. I forgot to turn on my phone. Miss Sen, don't be nervous. Madam knows that you are a woman of your word. Sen Shuang immediately got into the car. Her word? She only knew that she would not run away because she needed the Sen family's house back. The car drove into the Zhang family villa without much fanfare. It was so quiet that it did not seem like a wedding. Chapter 4. Marrying into the Zhang family. To be precise, the Zhang family did not prepare a wedding. The bride was poor, and the groom was a vegetable from an aristocratic family. This combination would probably make them the best couple of the year. The Zhang family did not want to be embarrassed. Therefore, there was no wedding car, and she did not even have a wedding dress. She was brought into the Zhang family just like that. In a span of the day, she had become someone else. If she had known that it would be like this, she would have just moved in yesterday. Sen Shuang walked along the gravel road all the way into the villa. What did her new identity give her? Well, now someone was taxed to carry her luggage, and they brought it straight up the stairs to her room. She did not even have a chance to escape. The bride is here. Childlike, cheerful laughter could be heard from the other room. Sen Shuang looked to the living room, but someone blocked her. The clothes are upstairs, Miss Sen. You should freshen up. After he said that, Sen Shuang remembered that she did not manage to shower at the school. She nodded shyly and followed the servant to the room upstairs. The young master's room is here, miss. The servant stopped at the door. Sen Shuang looked at the half-closed door and carefully pushed it open. Crystal lights lit up the quiet room. The entire room was mainly black, white, and gray. There was evidence of a man's life everywhere. With just a glance, she knew that the man lying on the bed was her husband, Zhang Hong. Sen Shuang walked inside with noticeable hesitation. The closer she got to the man on the bed, the clearer she saw him. He still looked extremely handsome, even though he was sick. The pallor of his face made his lips seem rosy. Other than the fact that he was a little thin, it was clear that the Zhang family took good care of him. The man was just lying there, and his breathing was so weak that no one could feel it. If it were not for the fact that Zhang Hong was still alive, she would have definitely been frightened. She might have even screamed. Walking to the side of the bed, Sen Shuang quietly sized up the man for a few seconds. After confirming that he really could not get up, she let out a sigh of relief. On the shelf by the bed, there was a red dress. She was the bride. As she looked at the brightly colored wedding dress in front of her, the corners of her lips curled up. Marrying into the Zhang family and marrying Zhang Hong did not seem like a bad deal. At the very least, she could feel the Zhang family's care and respect for her. Sen Shuang looked at the clothes and meant to head to the bathroom. Then she looked at the man on the bed. She stopped in her tracks, bent down, and carefully reached under the blanket. She pinched his thigh. As expected, the man on the bed did not move at all. He really was a vegetable, as he did not react to anything. No reaction was the best reaction for Sen Shuang. She heaved a sigh of relief and immediately stripped off her clothes. The entire Zhang family was gathered in the family hall. They were waiting for the person who had brought them together today. Congratulations to you, sister-in-law, for getting a daughter-in-law who will dote on you in the future. I wonder when our Ting Hao will be able to let me breathe a sigh of relief. Kai Yan held Lan Yibai's hand and smiled very happily, as she was the one who was getting a daughter-in-law. Zhang Ting Hao's expression was mocking. Mother, don't tell me that you're hoping I'll share the same fate as Zhang Hong and be stuck in bed. Everyone froze. Lan Yibai pulled her hand out of Lu Yan's grasp. Zhang Tinghao said reluctantly, Congratulations, Aunt. I hope that he and sister-in-law will have a child soon. The living room was silent again. This time, it was filled with Lan Yibai's anger. Everyone knew that Zhang Hong would not be waking up. He would not have a child anytime soon. Was he mocking them? Before anyone could open their mouths, They heard sounds coming from upstairs. Sen Shuang slowly followed old Master Zhang down the stairs. Her hands were placed in front of her, and her back was straight. Every step she took was extremely poised. However, she looked like a fairy from heaven who had descended. The bright red dress she wore made her features even more beautiful. The entire living room was silent. It was as if there were only two sets of footsteps at that moment. Zhang Tinghao's gaze fell on Sen Shuang. He could not leave. His breathing stopped. He felt as if the woman in front of her had stolen his soul. His heart stopped beating. Her name is Sen Shuang. She is Zhang Hong's wife. Lan Yabai held her hand affectionately and gracefully introduced her. Sen Shuang followed Lan Yabai as she introduced herself to everyone. Zhang Tinghao grabbed her hand when she arrived in front of him. The bride and my sister-in-law is Sen Shuang of the Sen family, the #1 solicitor in Lin City. As expected, she lives up to her reputation. Sen Shuang took her hand back and hid it behind her back. Following Lan Yubai's prompt, she called him Tinghao. Hearing this almost melted Zhang Tinghao's heart. If it were not for Lu Yan pulling him along, he would have pounced on them. Everyone said that the Sen's family's daughters were beautiful. He did not expect Sen Shuang to be so beautiful that it could kill him. Lan Yabai's expression was fierce as she shielded Sen Shuang. I'm afraid that my nephew is already drooling. He must be hungry. Zhang Tinghao quickly wiped the corner of his mouth. He really was drooling, but he wasn't hungry. Sen Shuang did not get to eat much during the event. She only heaved a sigh of relief when she returned to her room. Her back was all chilly wet. Chapter 5. I am Sen Shuang, your wife. She took a glance at the man lying quietly on bed. She felt that this half-dead Zhang He was much more pleasing to the eye than those men. At the very least, he would lie there obediently, not looking at her lewdly, and not making her feel disgusted. He was like a doll to her. He only listened to her quietly. It really was good. Sen Shuang had just bent down when the door to the man's room opened. Lan Yabai had someone bring her hot milk, and she was holding a basin of water. Sen Shuang was about to take it when Lan Yabai sidestepped her. Let me do it. It might be too embarrassing for you since you only just got married. She was going to wipe Zhang Hong's body. Sen Shuang was stunned and turned around, her face red. Although she was prepared, it was too sudden. Although Zhang Hong looked good, she could not strip a man naked. Lan Yabai was not surprised by her reaction. She unbuttoned his shirt and lifted the blanket. She said calmly, If you see Uncle Tinghao after this, avoid him. You two won't get along. She understood Lan Yabai's words. She wanted her to stay away from Zhang Tinghao, so that she would not turn her son into a cuckold. I understand, madam. You should change how you said that. Sen Shuang whispered, Mom. Her face was still red. Lan Yabai was done with her work. She looked at Sen Shuang and said, I won't do it in the future. Since you're married into the Zhang family, and since you're Zhang Hong's wife, I'll let you take care of him. After all, he is not a child. Lan Yabai's tone was not heavy, but what she heard was soul-stirring. She looked at the towel in Lan Yubai's hand and then looked at Zhang Hong, who was already dressed neatly on the bed. Sen Shuang felt that marrying into the Zhang family might not be as good as she had imagined. Being with a half-dead husband would not be as easy as she had thought. Lan Yubai did not point it out and smiled. Then she took the things she had brought and left. Sen Shuang sat in front of the bed and looked at the quiet man on the bed. After a long time, she said in a low voice, Hello, Zhang Hong. I'm Sen Shuang, your wife. It was already early in the morning when Sen Shuang woke up. She turned around and saw the man lying next to her. She was married. She was the young madam of the Zhang family. Sen Shuang sized up the man beside her. The man next to her did not move at all throughout the night. He was indeed a vegetable, and it seemed like he only knew how to breathe. She actually slept next to a strange man. Moreover, she had slept very well. Perhaps it was because she knew that the man next to her was harmless, or perhaps it was because the Sun family had fallen. Either way, the Zhang family was a safe haven for her now, and she had let her guard down. Sen Shuang got up, changed her clothes, and went to the bathroom to wash up. She looked at the man lying and moving in the bed and returned to the bathroom with a towel. After the incident with the Sun family, she thought that she would never get married. However, she was very satisfied with the Zhang family's safe haven. She casually wiped her hands and face. Sen Shuang went downstairs. The Zhang family had already woken up. When Sen Shuang walked closer, she realized that even her new uncle's family, who lived outside, had come. Could it be that they wanted to drink tea from their new daughter-in-law? When Father Sen was still alive, he liked to drink tea. Therefore, Sen Shuang's tea-making skills were not bad. Zhang Tinghao's eyes were glued to her from the moment she had came downstairs. Sen Shuang pretended that she did not see it and obediently brought a cup of tea to old Master Zhang first. She picked up another cup and brought it to Lan Yubai. "Mother, please have some tea." Lan Yubai smiled as she pulled her hand and fastened a jade bracelet around her wrist. "Have a seat. The Zhang family doesn't have such rules. You don't have to do this for us in the future." No matter what, Sen Shuang had picked a good mother-in-law. Perhaps it was because she knew that her son could not treat her well, so she took the opportunity to do it. This way, she could keep her. "Thank you, Mom." Sen Shuang looked at the expensive item around her wrist and did not reject it. She thought to herself, could this family heirloom be of the Zhang family? I wonder if it's worth 30 million. After the family had breakfast, Sen Shuang had some time for herself. Apart from sponging Zhang Hong, she was as comfortable in the Zhang family's house as she had been when she was the eldest daughter of the Sen family. Sen Shuang found a few comic books in Zhang Hong's study and sat in the rose garden downstairs. The sunlight shone through the molted rose bushes, spilled onto her face and over the book she held. It was August, and she could feel a hint of cold as she sat under the shade of the trees in the morning. Thinking about how she would be stuck in this large courtyard for the rest of her life, Sen Shuang could not help but smile. The Sen family had already lost everything, so she should waste no time feeling reticent. It was already very difficult to find a good life, let alone a life spending money without needing to work. Her husband was obedient and her mother-in-law was caring and considerate. Most importantly, she could buy any betrothal gifts from the Zhang family. Wasn't this the marriage that every woman in the world dreamed of? Sen Shuang fell asleep as she thought about it. In her dreams, a huge hand crept up her shoulder and landed on her face. Chapter 6. If you get up, I won't have to be bullied anymore. The person on the recliner suddenly woke up. After she saw the shocked Zhang Tinghao, her gaze darkened. Zhang Tinghao did not expect her to suddenly wake up. Once he recovered from his shock, his courage grew again. He smiled and walked forward. "I saw that you weren't dressed very warmly. I was afraid that you would catch a cold, so I wanted to warm you up." What did he want to warm me up with? His claws? His body? "What are you doing here, Tinghao?" Sen Shuang's voice was filled with anger. She was furious. Zhang Tinghao saw the coldness in her voice and felt a little timid. He then thought about how the Sen family only had this little girl. What was there for him to be afraid of? Furthermore, he was feeling undeniably good a moment ago. The remaining warmth he felt now made him extremely excited. He smiled evilly. "Sister-in-law, don't be nervous. I am very easy to get along with. Let's sit together and chat." Zhang Tinghao shamelessly came over. Shuang quickly stood up and turned around to walk back into the house. Sister-in-law, Zhang Tingtao's voice became softer. Seeing Shuang stop in her tracks, he walked over proudly. I know why you want to marry into the Zhang family, but you've seen Zhang Hong. He doesn't have many breaths left. Moreover, if you stay with him, you'll only be a widow. Once the old master dies, the Zhang family will be mine. Even Aunt will have to take care of me. Why don't you be with me now? What do you think you'll want later? Shuang caught Zhang Tinghao's fingertip a second before it would have touched her. Zhang Tinghao was stunned for a moment. Then he smiled and wanted to hold her hand. However, he was not as fast as Shuang. She turned around and bent down, executing a perfect over-the-shoulder throw. Zhang Tinghao was lying on the ground, his limbs pointing up skyward. He was so stunned that he could not even speak. Shuang looked coldly at the bastard on the ground and snorted coldly. If you want to inherit the Zhang family, you should at least try to get on your feet before doing anything else. Shuang, you wretched girl, you actually... Ouch! She heard Zhang Tinghao's wails and cries ringing out behind her as she walked away. She acted as if she could no longer hear him and continued stalking away. Just you wait. One day, I'll have you begging on your knees for me. Quick, someone help me. My head's bleeding. Call an ambulance to take me to the hospital. She had left a mess behind her. The Zhang family's eldest young master had been attacked. There was a large bloody hole at the back of his head. He was almost scared to death. Shuang walked off, as graceful as the wind. The servants who were watching her were so shocked that they could not close their mouths. When she returned to her room, her tense nerves suddenly relaxed. Looking at the quiet man on the bed, she suddenly felt an inexplicable sense of grief. What she felt now seemed to hurt more than finding out about the Sen family. She could not help but sit on the ground and cry. Why? Why am I so unlucky? It's all your fault. Shuang pointed at the man on the bed who could not even blink. He did not deserve to have all the sympathy. She suddenly had an epiphany. She said, Why don't you wake up? If you get up, I won't have to be bullied anymore. There's not a single good person in your family. Everyone bullies me. Get up and beat them. Those people who destroy the Sen family are all bastards. They want to take advantage of me. I'll cripple him next time. Your cousin is really not a good person. Neither are you. Perhaps it was because she was so tired from scolding him that she actually fell asleep. Tears dried on her cheeks as she fell asleep. Her cherry-red lips were still moving as she continued muttering in her sleep. The man on the bed was still lying quietly. He did not react to her whining, save for the slight twitch on his hand. Zhang Tinghao had suffered a concussion thanks to Shuang. This caused quite a stir in the Zhang family. Lu Yan looked at her son with heartache. Shuang walked over. Her eyes were about to be poisoned to death by Shuang. What happened? Lan Yubai saw her and stepped in front of her to shield her. She pulled her to the side and spoke softly. Ever since Zhang Hong was injured, Zhang Tinghao had taken over more and more of the Zhang family in the past 6 months. Although he had the protection of the old master, Lan Yubai knew in her heart that if Zhang Hong did not wake up soon, she was afraid that she would not have a good life in the future. Even if it was old master who left them more property, they would have nothing to eat. Moreover, the Zhang family's second branch would not be so easy to deal with. Shuang pursed her lips and said, I hit him. You heard her. She already admitted it. Hurry up and send her to the Public Security Bureau. Get someone to lock her up. She's a lunatic. Zhang Tinghao heard Shuang admit it and immediately became smug. If it were not for the dizziness in his head, he would probably be dancing happily. The old master gave him a cold glance, and Zhang Tinghao stopped. He said angrily, Grandfather, she was the one who hit me. Father, she has beaten Tinghao up. You can't be biased. Furthermore, the Zhang family will have to rely on Tinghao in the future. What if something happens to him? There was a bandage around Zhang Tinghao's head. Hearing Li Yan's words, he immediately fainted on the sofa. He looked like he was on the verge of death and seemed even weaker than Zhang Hong. Chapter 7. Beautiful women are lovable. The old man snorted coldly. I am not dead yet. Why do I have to rely on him? Li Yan's face suddenly turned pale. She knew that she had said something wrong. Dad, that's not what I meant. Of course I want you to live a long life, but now that Zhang Hong is bedridden, you can't let Ting Hao lie down too, right? These words made Lan Yabai's face turn sour. She gripped Sen Shuang's hand tightly. Dad, Sen Shuang didn't do it on purpose. Lan Yabai wanted to explain, but Sen Shuang cut her off. I did do it on purpose. If he wasn't Zhang Hong's cousin, I would have beaten him even more severely. Everyone in the room immediately sucked in a sharp breath. Even Zhang Tinghao could not help but duck his head when he heard this. She had gone easy on him. Li Yan was shocked. Was she really a lady from a wealthy family? The woman in front of her behaved like a hag. Dad, you have to make a decision for Ting Hao's sake. The Zhang family can't do without him now. Zhang Hong is bedridden, and the Zhang family had no heir. Zhang Ting Hao was the next natural heir to the Zhang family's inheritance. Li Yan was crying pitifully beside him. Zhang Ting Hao also straightened up and insisted on making the Sen Shuang suffer a little so he could subdue her in the future. Although his head was injured, this did not stop him from daydreaming. Sen Shuang also straightened up and said loudly, I feel like someone like him will ruin the Zhang family sooner or later. What nonsense are you sprouting? Li Yan almost jumped up from the sofa. If Lan Yabai had not stopped her, she would have scratched Sen Shuang's face. Stop talking. Lan Yabai pulled her back. Sen Shuang did not listen and retorted. Ting Hao said that when grandfather dies, the entire Zhang family will belong to him. Even mother and I will have to listen to him and obey his orders. Sen Shuang did not finish her sentence. Zhang Ting Hao and his mother's faces were pale. Ever since Zhang Hong's incident, the Zhang family's matters were all under old Master Zhang's control. Zhang Ting Hao made himself small and trembled, not daring to look at the old Master Zhang's expression. He only said, I didn't say that. That woman is talking nonsense. Father, Ting Hao wouldn't. He is always the first to obey you. Although old Master Zhang did not say a word, Zhang Ting Hao and his mother were already drenched in cold sweat from fear. Sen Shuang stood in the sidelines and showed no signs of caring. Lan Yabai also pretended not to hear them. The old man snorted coldly. You're actually hoping I'll die early so you can have all the Zhang family's assets, huh? It's not like that. This woman hit me and doesn't want to be responsible for her actions. Sen Shuang is your sister-in-law, not an outsider, Lan Yabai said coldly. Although Sen Shuang had only just moved in, when she heard these words, she felt a little touched. Get lost. In the future, no one from our family is allowed to come here into this house without my permission, the old man said firmly. Although he was angry, he controlled his anger very well. He did not seem very surprised about this matter. Grandpa, I'll head out first. Once they heard that they could leave, Zhang Ting Hao and his mother hurried off the compound. Now, they did not pursue the early incident, let alone send Sen Shuang to the Public Security Bureau. They were not worried about their own lives. The old man had served in the army when he was young. It was said that he even killed people. Even though he was old now, he was still a man of his word and the most powerful man in the Zhang family, except for Zhang Hong. Are you all right? Now the mother and son had finally left, Lan Yabai heaved a sigh of relief. She looked at Sen Shuang and said worriedly, In the future, if you encounter any trouble, just look for me. I'll make the decision for you. Don't do it yourself if you want someone beaten up. This meant that she wanted to get someone to do it? After this incident, Zhang Tinghao did not come looking for trouble again. She also lived her life in peace. However, Lan Yibai's reminder made her willing to treat them well. She would sponge Zhang Hong every day. When she felt Lan Yibai standing behind her, Sen Shuang could not help but be more careful. Although she looked like an unassuming girl, she had been practicing martial arts ever since she was young, and she was not weak. She had flipped Zhang Hong over on her own. Lan Yibai had been a little surprised. "I'll get someone to prepare supper." Seeing Lan Yibai leave, Sen Shuang heaved a sigh of relief. She pulled Zhang Hong's covers back and casually wiped him with a towel. "I've been tolerating you so graciously for so long. If the Sen family had not gone bankrupt, I wouldn't be here serving you like this. You must be very lucky in your past life." As Sen Shuang rambled on, her hands did not stop moving. She only felt that something was off about Zhang Hong. She stopped wiping him and her eyes were fixed on a little bulge in the kilt. Did she do something wrong? "I asked someone to bring you milk. Is there anything you want to eat tonight?" Lan Yibai walked in with a glass of milk in her hand. Sen Shuang heard her movements. She did not know if it was because she felt guilty or because she felt embarrassed, but she grabbed the blanket and draped it over Zhang Hong's half-naked upper body. She turned around to look at Lan Yibai with a red face and shook her head. She was not hungry. She did not want to eat anything. Chapter 8. The beautiful daughter-in-law cannot be kept. Lan Yibai looked at Sen Shuang's face and asked, "What's wrong? Are you sick?" Sen Shuang shook her head, but she only saw something that she should not have. "I'm fine. It's just that the room feels pretty warm. I feel hot because I've been moving around." Lan Yibai's gaze drifted to the bed and she immediately ran over. "Why did you cover her up with a blanket?" Sen Shuang looked at Lan Yibai, who pulled the blanket off Zhang Hong's head. Sure enough, in just a short while, the man's face had turned a little red. She gripped the towel and stood still, embarrassed. She did not know what to do. She was only concerned about covering Zhang Hong just now. Her hands must have been too hasty, and she had not thought it through. Lan Yibai did not blame her, but looking at Zhang Hong on the bed, her face was full of heartache. Zhang Hong is a person who likes to be clean. He doesn't like to be touched by others. The people who take care of him have to be careful because he nitpicks. Her words made Sen Shuang realize she was careless and did not take good care of him. "There's soup in the kitchen. You didn't eat anything for dinner. Go and have some." The flush on Sen Shuang's face faded. She took a glance at Zhang Hong and left. It was better to give them some peace. In the room, Lan Yibai looked at Zhang Hong, who was sleeping soundly on the bed inside. She helped him put on his pajamas and carefully tucked him in. "I don't know when you'll wake up, so I had you get married to Sen Shuang. This way she can take care of you. However, she doesn't seem to know how to take care of others. I really don't know if such a beautiful wife is good or bad. I'm just afraid that if you continue sleeping, you won't be able to keep her. I know you can hear me, but you just don't want to wake up right now. If you want to rest, you can rest. I'll take good care of Sen Shuang. After all, she's a little girl. She'll understand after a while." Thinking of what happened 2 days ago, Lan Yibai couldn't help but say, "Your cousin is acting up again." Sen Shuang's face. "Forget it. I know you like beautiful girls." Lan Yibai thought that Zhang Hong would wake up and get angry with her, but he was so obedient that he stayed quiet. When he was born, he had been quiet too. When Sen Shuang returned to her room, Lan Yibai was just leaving. When she saw her, she said, "I heard that school is starting soon. The day after tomorrow." Starting from the day after tomorrow, she would be a sophomore. Very soon, she would be able to join the workforce and support herself. When she obtained the Sen family villa, she would have the ability to support herself. Would she still stay here? It's been quite hot lately. Let the chauffeur send you there. Sen Shuang wanted to refuse. She did not want the school to know about her situation, but she thought that Lan Yibai wanted her to come back and take care of Zhang Hong, so she agreed. Thank you, Mother. Although she did not know how to take care of people, she could talk while lying next to him. She was keeping Zhang Hong company. After Lan Yibai left, Sen Shuang lay on the bed and looked at the school forum. Many of her classmates had already returned to the school. She sighed before turning off her phone. Sen Shuang looked at Zhang Hong, who was lying quietly beside her. She could not help but lower her head and move her entire face closer to him. Other than his face being a little pale, he really was good looking. As a woman, Sen Shuang was ashamed to be inferior to him. How could he be so good looking? She couldn't help but touch Zhang Hong's face. After touching him, she quickly pulled her hand back, feeling like a thief. She thought that he would not react, so she started caressing Zhang Hong's face wantonly. She rubbed his face, pinched his nose, and traced the lines of his lips. Such an obedient person was really hard to find. Did your mother say bad things about me just now? Sen Shuang imitated her mother-in-law's voice. You're not allowed to talk to her. You're also not allowed to speak up for her. Do you hear me? Hurry up and tell me. If your mother and I fall into an ocean, who will you save? If you dare to say you'll save your mother, I'll divorce you. Sen Shuang laughed out loud after she finished speaking. It really was interesting to play with someone who could not defend themselves. I'm going to school tomorrow, so I can't accompany you during the day. The maids are actually reading to you, right? If you're bored, I'll bring you the television over and let that accompany you. Since you don't talk much, the television won't dislike you. However, your mother said that I can come back to accompany you at night, so we can keep talking like this. Let's be good friends. She was the one who talked and talked. The man beside her did not react. However, Sen Shuang felt that this was a good thing. Unknowingly, she had said a lot of things, and that did not matter. It was a quiet night. She did not have to care about offending anyone. The people around her would not interrupt her or quarrel with her. Sen Shuang had said that the Sen Corporation was bankrupt and that she had been driven out of her home by the bank. She told them about how she was bullied. As she spoke, she could not help but cry. As she cried, she cursed. She wiped her tears and snot all over Zhang Hong's expensive pajamas. In the end, she still felt angry and reached out to pinch his arm twice. What do you think I should do in the future? Should I stay at the Zhang family forever? Actually, there's nothing wrong with staying with your family. Chapter 9. Spending your family's money and bullying your family. It's no different from when I was with my own family. They did not give me money, but perhaps they thought that I didn't have anything to spend it on. I heard that you used to manage all the assets of the Zhang family. That was quite clear. Where did all your money go? Didn't you leave a small treasury for yourself? Sen Shuang suddenly became energetic when she talked about money. She pointed at Zhang Hong on the bed and said, Did you give the card and money to your mother without telling me? You only know how to side with your mother. After venting her anger, her mood was much better. She leaned on Zhang Hong's chest and whispered, Actually, your mother is not bad. After saying that, she felt deflated and fell asleep without moving. Every morning when Sen Shuang woke up, Lan Yabai would come to the room and help her change Zhang Hong's clothes. Although she told Sen Shuang to do it, it was obvious that she did not expect her to do it well. Why is it purple? Lan Yabai frowned as she looked at the mark on her son's arm. She felt that she wronged him as a mother. How did she not know that he was injured? Sen Shuang looked guilty as she gazed at Zhang Hong. I must have accidentally bumped into him. I did not take good care of him. Mom, it's not your fault. I did not take good care of him either. She had, in fact, pinched him when she was venting her anger. Lan Yabai had just taken the ointment from the medicine box when Sen Shuang ran over eagerly. Let me do it. I'll take better care of Zhang Hong in the future. When she said that, Lan Yabai thought that the child had gotten the hang of it. She handed the ointment to Sen Shuang and prepared to take off Zhang Hong's pants. Sen Shuang was so scared that Sen Shuang quickly pushed Lan Yabai aside, afraid that she would see the mark on Zhang Hong's thigh. I'll do it. I'll get better at it if I do it a few more times. Lan Yubai's expression was even more tender. School is starting tomorrow. Let's go to the mall in the afternoon. Lan Yubai took a gold bank card and placed it on her hand. She bent down and left with the basin. Sen Shuang looked at the card in her hand and was slightly stunned. I was just talking about not having money last night, and I got this card today. Could it be that there's a camera in this room? In the afternoon, Sen Shuang came back after spending hundreds of thousands of yuan. She displayed the true nature of a young miss to the fullest. She did not lack anything now. She even bought herself 2 new dresses. At night, Sen Shuang was bold as she laid in bed. She rested her head on Zhang Hong's waist and ate a plate of frozen grapes and said, "Your family is richer than ours." I mean, when the Sen family was rich, they were not as rich as the Zhang family. When my father was alive, he did not give me this much pocket money. Your mother gave me a card that's good for 1,000,000 yuan. Do you think you'll want me to pay it back later on? Sen Shuang crossed her legs and turned to look at the man who had not moved. She brought the half-eaten grape skin to Zhang Hong's mouth and asked kindly, "Do you eat grapes?" After saying that, she put the grape skin on Zhang Hong's mouth and smiled. "Although you can't eat it, you can smell it. Spending your family's money and bullying your family is so much fun." Suddenly the door opened. She was so scared that she hurriedly put away the grape and pretended to cover Zhang Hong with a blanket. "It's so hot. If you cover him with so many layers, he'll have a prickly rash." Lan Yubai's voice came from behind her. "Mom, you're here. You're starting school tomorrow. I was afraid that you wouldn't be able to rest well, so I poured you a glass of milk." After saying that, she saw Zhang Hong's face instead of a smile. Zhang Hong's complexion is much better compared to how it was a few days ago. Even his lips have moistened quite a bit. Sen Shuang said with guilt in her voice, "It must be because you took good care of him, Mom." "I'm not the only one who's been taking care of him. You're also very attentive." Sen Shuang felt guilty after hearing Lan Yubai's voice. She was just torturing Zhang Hong a moment ago. Thinking of the card that she had been given, she felt that she had indeed treated Zhang Hong a little bit better. "Mom, please take a seat." Sen Shuang got off the bed and handed over half a plate of cold grapes to Lan Yubai. She smiled and said, "You eat the grapes. It's so cold. Girls should not stay up so late. Let the chauffeur drop you off tomorrow. If there's anything else you need, you can tell me. Apart from Zhang Hong, the Zhang family won't let you down." Lan Yubai's gaze landed on Zhang Hong on the bed. When would her son wake up? Lan Yubai's previous words were a promise and a warning to her. She told her that she would do very well in the Zhang family. She would live better now than before. But at the same time, she was expected to be faithful, and she was not allowed to cuckold her son. Sen Shuang obediently nodded and agreed to be a good wife. As soon as Lan Yubai left, she immediately glared at Zhang Hong. "See, your mother said it again. I've only been here for a few days, and she's already said that a few times. It's not like I seduced your cousin. Is it my fault for looking like this? Ah, this makes me so mad. Are you on your mother's side too? I won't let you sleep on the bed any longer." Sen Shuang kicked Zhang Hong angrily. She did not know how hard she kicked him, but there was a clear thump sound as Zhang Hong's head collided with the bedside table. Chapter 10. The Poor Daughter. Sen Shuang shivered and reached out to touch his head. There seemed to be a big bump on his head. She had injured Zhang Hong. "I'm sure it doesn't hurt. Fortunately, your hair is covering it. You can't tell it's there." Sen Shuang tidied up Zhang Hong's hair carefully. She only heaved a sigh of relief when she was sure that no one would be able to see anything. Lan Yubai probably would not look so carefully. Moreover, it would probably heal up in a few days. After that, nobody would know. Fortunately, her husband was a vegetable. If he were a child, he would probably cry for half the night. The man before her did not say a word. Sen Shuang, who had a guilty conscience, did her best to take care of him throughout the night. She covered him with a blanket, wiped his sweat, and even washed his face in the morning. She was afraid that Lan Yubai would only find out about her son's tragic state. Lan Yubai looked at all of this with satisfaction. Before Sen Shuang left for school, Lan Yubai stuffed another bank card into her hand. Mom, you just gave me one 2 days ago. The money came too easily. She was given it even though she had hit Zhang Hong. Now she even wanted to murder her husband. Miss Carter could not be holding another million, right? She reckoned that if this continued, she would be able to save enough money for herself before the Zhang family could help her buy the Sun family villa back. Eat well at school. The weather is going to turn cold. You can buy more beautiful clothes and bring them home with you. Was she asking her to dress beautifully and possibly make her son a cuckold? Sen Shuang thought about that, but naturally did not dare say it to Lan Yubai. This was because she still hoped that her mother-in-law would give her more allowance in the future. Mom, I already have enough clothes. I don't need so much money. Sen Shuang reluctantly pushed the bank card back. One could not be too greedy, not to mention that she hurt her son last night. She really could not bear it. Lan Yubai smiled gently and handed the card bank to her, saying, This isn't just for you. Go to the pavilion of delicacy after school and bring back a pair of jade porcelain vases. Maybe the money here isn't enough. Did she mean that she was to run errands and she might have to pay for it herself? Sen Shuang wanted to return the bank card even more. She wanted to refuse this trip, but she still smiled and said, Okay, I will definitely bring back those porcelain vases for you. Today was the first day of school. The new students had come to the school a week ago. Sen Shuang was still a university student. This year she was promoted to a sophomore. The dormitory had not changed. As soon as she entered, Mu Sen Sen hugged her. Darling, I missed you so much. Mu Sen Sen hugged her and acted coquettishly. The two of them rolled onto the bed. I don't think you missed me. You want me to die. Sen Shuang broke free from her embrace and quickly hid on the other side of the table. She looked at Mu Sen Sen warily, preventing her from pouncing on her again. Mu Sen Sen rolled her eyes at her. I know about the Sun family, Shuang Chuang. How have you been recently? Who would have thought that the once glorious Sun family would lose everything in just a few months? Sen Shuang's expression was sour. Although this was a fact, she could not help but feel sad that it was mentioned, even if it was in the past. I'm fine. Don't you see that my new dresses are all brand new? Sen Shuang spun around and let her see the beautiful light blue dress she wore that just came out this year. Lin City had just launched this less than a month ago, and there were only 2 pieces in the entire city. She had gone out of her way to buy them. After a long while, Mu Sen Sen let out a wolf whistle. Wow, did you take down your own family? The two of them used humor to cover up their sadness. Sen Shuang smiled and said, My mother-in-law bought it for me. Mother-in-law? Mu Sen Sen chewed on the unfamiliar noun and came back to her senses after a long while. Sen Shuang, you... Could it be that the Sen family had been defeated and you couldn't bear the pain and sold yourself? Clearly, her tyrannical novels had indeed not been read in vain. Sen Shuang was fulfilling the same storylines. Sen Shuang was not surprised by her shock. Her life was just like a novel. I'm married. Don't tell anyone. Mu Sen Sen nodded vigorously. She would definitely not be saying anything about the drama of a down-and-out daughter and an overbearing CEO. Seeing that she was curious but did not ask, Sen Shuang also took the initiative to tell her. She had suppressed her feelings for too long and needed a reliable friend to confide in. As the two of them talked, the other people in the dormitory returned. The two of them tactfully stopped talking and went to the admin office to report their attendance. Within a day, Sen Shuang heard so much gossip about the Sen family going bankrupt. She had gone from being worshipped like a star to a down-and-out daughter. Those she had never given a second glance to were now excited to see her, how she was faring. People were even laughing at the limited edition dress she was wearing. Everyone wanted to see how destitute This number one solicit was now. They could only watch helplessly as Sensual got into a luxurious car after school. When Sensual returned to the Zhang family residence, it was already late at night. She had brought the pair of green jade porcelain vases. The amount of the card that Lanyabai had given her was just right. It was obvious that she had known the price beforehand and had asked her to go over to take it. After making the purchase, she hurriedly rushed back to the house. The moment she entered, she saw the entire Zhang family was gathered together. Before she could react, Lan Yibai waved at her. Sensual is back. Come over and sit.